Hi, and welcome to Skrach. Today we're going to make Creole Gumbo. For this recipe, we'll be using a pound of chicken breast. I'm going to use a pound of smoked sausage, but traditionally andouille sausage is used. A half pound of shrimp, a quarter cup of vegetable oil, 2 to 3 tablespoons or 8 cloves of minced garlic, a quarter cup of Worcestershire sauce, 4 cups of beef broth, 3 celery sticks, 2 green onions, approximately 2 cups of white onions, a green bell pepper, a half cup of flour, salt, pepper, a bay leaf, a half teaspoon of cayenne, a 14-ounce can of stewed tomatoes, 5 tablespoons butter, and 2 cups okra. So I've already heated a quarter cup of vegetable oil over medium-high heat. Now I'm going to season my chicken breast with salt and pepper. And then we're going to let those brown for about 3 minutes per side. While the chicken breast is cooking, I'm going to go ahead and slice my sausage into about 1/4 inch pieces. So I've let the chicken cook for about 6 minutes total. Your goal here is to get this nice brown texture. We're not really cooking the chicken for gunniness because we will be stewing it later. We're just cooking it to get that nice crunchy texture on the outside. Once we brown the chicken, we're going to go ahead and brown the sausage. And we'll let the sausage go for about 6 to 8 minutes. And stir it frequently. So we've let the sausage go about 6 minutes. We're going to remove these with a slotted spoon so that we reserve some of the oil in the pan. And after we remove the sausage, we're going to melt 5 tablespoons of butter in there. And then we're going to proceed to making our roux. For the roux, I'm going to reduce heat to medium-low and start melting the butter. For those of you that don't know what a roux is, anytime a recipe calls for you to add flour to any type of melted or cooked fat and stir constantly, what they're telling you to do is to make a roux. Roux are used in most soups and stews. So now that my butter is melted, I'm going to add a half cup flour. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to stir constantly in a figure-8 pattern. And we're going to cook this until it gets to be a nice chocolate brown color, which can take anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes, and sometimes longer depending on the heat level you have your stovetop set to. My recommendation is that if you're not very comfortable making a roux, or if you've never done it before, to start off with a lower heat so that you don't burn it. I'm using a medium-low heat because I feel pretty confident in my ability to make a roux. You'll notice that the flour is interacting with the fat and starting to bubble and make a sauce. Okay, so the roux is just about done. For a gumbo, you really need a dark roux. As they say in New Orleans, it should be 2 shades away from burning. And you want it to have a really nutty smell. Now, once your roux is done, you're going to want to remove it from the heat and start to chop your vegetables. While the roux cools, we're going to go ahead and cut our vegetables. We're going to use what's known in Creole cooking as the holy trinity of vegetables. That's going to be celery, bell pepper, and onion. We're going to thinly slice the celery and dice the bell pepper and onion. So now that the roux's cooled a little bit, you can see how it's gotten a couple shades darker. This is the perfect shade for gumbo. We're going to go ahead and add our sliced celery, diced onions and diced bell peppers to this. Note that the roux is still off the heat. We're just going to give this a little stir, and then we're going to chop our green onions. When we chop our green onions, we're going to separate the whites from the greens. We'll go ahead and add the whites now, and the greens will be added later in the recipe. To the vegetables, we'll go ahead and add about 2 to 3 tablespoons of minced garlic, or 8 cloves of freshly minced garlic. A tiny bit more salt. Some black pepper. And a half teaspoon of cayenne. We'll return our cooktop to medium heat, and we'll cook these vegetables for about 8 minutes until the onions soften. Stirring frequently. Okay, so the vegetables have been cooking for about 8 minutes over medium heat. I'm going to go ahead and add the beef broth. And the dark roux that we made should thicken that up a little bit. But because a roux loses thickening power, the darker its color gets, we're also going to add 2 cups of okra. Now, I know a lot of people think they don't like okra because it can be a little slimy. I myself fall into that category normally. I hate okra. But what that slimy stuff is a starch that helps to thicken your broth and make the gumbo more of a stew than a soup. So it really is important to put that okra in there, and I can't even taste it in the final product. So after I add the okra, I'll start by adding my previously cooked meats. We'll start with the sausage. And then I'll cut my chicken into approximately 1-inch cubes. You'll note earlier I said we were cooking for texture and not for doneness, so it's okay if this chicken is a little pink in the middle, because this is when we're going to finish cooking it. You'll notice the chicken was the last thing I cut on the cutting board, and that's to prevent cross-contamination. I'm going to go ahead and add this to the gumbo. Then we're going to increase heat to high until the gumbo starts to boil. Then we will reduce the heat to low and let it simmer for 1 hour. Now that the gumbo has started to boil, I'm going to reduce heat to medium-low and cover and let this simmer for 1 hour before we add the tomatoes and the Worcestershire sauce. The gumbo has been simmering for an hour, so we're going to remove the lid, stir it a little, and add in a 14-ounce can of stewed tomatoes with its juices, a 1/4 cup of Worcestershire sauce, and optionally, we can add a bay leaf. We'll mix that in. Cover the gumbo again for an additional hour. After an additional hour, remove the lid for the remainder of the cooking time. Give it a little stir. And let the gumbo simmer without a lid for about 1 more hour. It's been an additional hour, so we're going to remove the bay leaf. We'll put in half of the reserved green onions. And a half pound of shrimp. We'll stir that in and let this cook for an additional 5 to 10 minutes until the shrimp becomes opaque and fully cooked. It's been 10 minutes and you can see that the shrimp is a nice opaque pinkish color. The gumbo is now done. Traditionally, gumbo is served over rice. So we're just going to take a couple ladlefuls. Pour it over the rice and garnish with the remaining green onion. Thank you again for joining me today on Skrach. Remember, if you like the content, please subscribe.